Welcome to the creative brain of Dean Hawk. Get ready to be challenged, inspired, and equipped to become a better ministry leader.
Welcome to this month's podcast. My name is Dean. Thank you so much for joining us. This month in our November podcast, we are going to be talking about the power of a budget. And it's November, and I know many of you are looking forward to the next calendar year. You're beginning to work on your budget, but I know that a lot of pastors, you don't do a budget, and you tend to function on a month-to-month operation, maybe a week-to-week operation. And I just want to share this month some benefits of establishing, implementing, and refining an annual church budget. And maybe I'll give some insights I'm going to be sharing some of the percentages and breakdowns on those different areas, some of those safeguards of percentages that how we should be spending our church monies and finances. Here at Rock Family Church, we function on a calendar year. I know there are some pastor friends that function on a fiscal year, that they operate on another 12-year window that doesn't totally match with the calendar. I have found with our church family that in February, we always do an annual report, and we give a financial breakdown for the preceding year, give some vision for the next year, and that is always a valuable tool in our toolbox, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But let's first dive in of some great reasons and maybe just kind of help redefine some of you, and this might even be helpful to some of your staff members and team members and helping them, even your board of directors, in identifying the need and the purpose of why we do a annual financial budget. Number one, it sets clear financial vision and direction. Here's what I would call it. It's purposeful spending. A budget aligns spending with our goals. It ensures that our resources are directed towards meaningful activities and projects. And here's the difference. It would be like driving from LA to Boston in the 1960s versus driving from LA to Boston today using GPS, Siri, Google Maps, or whatever. If we were going to make that drive today, we are going to know where every turn, every stop, we're going to know how many miles it is to the next city, to the next fuel station. Back up into the 60s when there weren't as many fuel stations, and you just said, I know Boston is northeast from here. And you just set off driving. You might make some bad turns, some wrong turns, some good turns. You might take some detours that you really didn't need to take because you don't have a clear map and a clear direction of where you're wanting to go. And what a budget does is, in that vision piece, it avoids that mission drift. That for churches, a budget helps keep our financial resources aligned with our priorities and prevent spending on activities that don't support the church's vision. In other words, we don't allow the circumstances to drive how we spend. We allow vision to drive and to be the motivator of how we spend. Secondly, it improves our stewardship and our accountability. The people are sacrificially giving, donating to our church and organization, and I believe we have a responsibility to be good stewards of those funds and not just spend here and there, and that looks good, let's do that, but to have an intentional purpose of how we're going to spend it, that we're getting the biggest bang out of every dollar that is donated to cause it to get the biggest return upon their investment. And so we see that in the parable of the talents, that there is a stewardship, that our church budget should reflect those biblical principles of stewardship that we see like in the parable of the talents, the one with 1 talent, 2 talents, and 5. The one did not spend his talents in a way that honored God. The others managed their resources responsibly, and God blessed them, and they were promoted. I believe sometimes our church income and our church contributions are locked and flatline because we're not showing responsibility and good stewardship principles. And then there's the accountability piece, that a budget provides a framework for accountability to others, whether that's staff members, church leadership, board of directors, and our biggest person are our congregants. And so what it does is it builds trust by showing that as leaders, we are committed to good, wise financial management and stewardship. Third reason we do a budget is here's a big one: stress reduction and financial stability. Knowing where every dollar is going will reduce immense anxiety, and living within the means creates peace of mind. So we're not constantly concerned about running out of resources. And so we know in our past experience of doing budgets and tracking income and patterns and so forth, we know that the first couple weeks of January can be a very challenged month of giving, because people's credit card bills are coming due and they're paying for Christmas. And I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago, we had noticed this trend. And in December, we as a team and staff and leadership began to pray that January wouldn't be a down month, a low month. We wouldn't have low weeks, but January, we would start the year strong and our giving would be above and beyond what our average giving in the months of the previous year were. And we began to apply our faith to that situation. And we've, in the last couple of years, have not seen that dip. Now, often, not so much now as online contributions have gone up, but traditionally you can see a lull in giving. You can see some downward trends in the summer. And often those people that have been gone will catch up or make up. But when you're operating, when you still have a mortgage to pay, utilities to pay, salaries to pay in the summer, you need to budget and you need to know that those finances are there. And a budget will help you get through some of those anxious times. And then it also provides that emergency preparedness, that budgets allow for planned savings. It makes it easier to handle unexpected expenses without causing that financial strain or chaos or crisis mode of operation. Number 4, it encourages discipline and it avoids debt. It encourages discipline and avoids debt. Here's what I would call it. It's controlled spending. Budgeting forces us to live within our means, making it less likely to incur debt. And so what it does is it avoids misuse, it avoids overspending, it avoids impulse buying. We've got the money, we can now buy this. And we know that it's in the budget, it's been planned. Where other times, if you're living week to week, month to month, you see a surge in the offering, you go, hey, we had $2,000 extra come in above our average. Let's spend it. Well, that's really not the way to plan or to function, because what happens is you're spending and you might need next month that $2,000 pad to get you through a lull in the giving. And so it avoids that impulse buying. With a budget, it's easier to avoid the spontaneous purchases that could derail our financial plans or stretch our resources too thin. And the other thing I like is it forces our team members, our staff members, department heads, it forces them to think, to plan ahead, and for them to live within the boundaries of what their department has been given for the year. Number 5, we achieve goals and financial growth and strength. We achieve goals and financial growth and strength. The measurable goals. Budgets make it easier to set and track progress towards our financial goals, like saving for a building fund or saving for a missionary project or community outreach or community projects or a new mission ministry that we want to add, or we're believing God to add a new staff member to expand our team. But then it also provides growth and investment. And having a budget can reveal areas of surplus that could be invested for growth, allowing a church to fund more significant initiatives over time and maybe defund areas that you're not seeing the return or the impact on. Number 6 is transparency and trust within the organization. I believe that a budget, a well-oiled budget machine, builds congregational trust. That if we as a church, when we're maintaining transparent budgeting practices, it fosters great trust and it encourages congregants to give more, knowing their contributions are being managed with care. I have had many people who have come to Rock, and in February, as I mentioned a short time ago, we do our annual report. And it's all of our giving, our donations, where we've given breakdowns of the big areas. We don't give specific salaries, but we say we spent this much on salaries. We spent this much on mortgage. We spent this much on utilities. We want them to see where their donations are going. And here's what it has done. It has given a confidence to our contributors to have more confidence in giving because they know that we are being frugal and they can see by the numbers that nobody's getting rich here. This money is not just being tossed in frivolous ways and directions, but there's intentionality to it. And I have often had people that move to Colorado Springs that have been in different churches across the country, and they've made this kind of statement. I have gone to ABC XYZ church for 12 years, and I have no idea how much money comes in per year. I have no idea how much we give to missions. I have no idea how much we're spending on building and facilities. And I believe as investors in the corporation, in the vision, that they deserve to know and should know. And I think it provides a sense of fairness and balance among our departments as well. That when they know we're being intentional about budgets and each department, youth ministry, children's ministry, small groups, men's ministry, women's ministry, they know that they're being budgeted. Then if you're just living week to week and month to month, the youth ministry provides, says, here is a need, and you say, well, we have the funds, let's do that. And so you drop a large amount towards a youth ministry. Children's ministry says, well, I didn't know we had extra funds. If you're giving out money, I want to do that. Well, we don't have those funds right now. And so it avoids that conflict and that kind of thing. And I fully believe that people are more likely to give and have confidence in their giving when they know healthy practices are being achieved and set in place. And then number 7, our last one here, is it enhances our ability to be generous. It's intentional generosity. And with a budget, generosity becomes intentional. And as a church, we can give more regularly, we can give strategically, and we can give with joy. I would call it focused giving. And if we don't plan to give, just as we're trying to encourage our members to tithe and bring their first fruits and give of 10% and beyond, I believe that we as a church and an organization, I believe that if that principle works for us as believers and followers of Christ, it will work for us as a collective group and believers and followers of Christ. And so what we do is we give 10% and well beyond now in these days and times. We give 10% and beyond of our annual income is set aside and budgeted in multiple directions. It's to local missions, national missions, and international missions, and helping in those needs. And then our last one is, I had one more here, number 8, is long-term security and legacy building. That it helps us plan for the future. A budget allows for that long-term planning, that planning for maybe a building renovation or a building expansion, or maybe it's selling the current property, saving up money and taking the proceeds and buying a new property, maybe setting up for retirement for the senior pastor who is literally getting in his senior years. It could be setting up legacy projects that we're going to fund this community project for years to come. And a budget enables us to manage those resources wisely, and we live with greater peace in fulfilling God's call with integrity, trust, and vision. And so we want to leave a positive impact on people's lives on how church and money can be done right and how it can be done well. Because I would tell you there's a pretty good size percentage of people who sit in churches today that have been burned, hurt, wounded, and offended by misuse and misappropriation of funds by church leadership. And it causes them to be skeptical. You haven't done anything out of bounds. But 3 pastors ago, they did. And it's still, you're reaping the fruit of what that guy did 15 years ago. So just some basics on building a budget. The first thing I would tell you is, I know a lot of you have taken it. I would encourage you to retake it. Go through Financial Peace University with Dave Ramsey and his team once again. And I would tell you to implement those values into your personal lifestyle, into a personal budget, and into your personal home. Because you're never going to lead an organization, excuse me, you're never going to lead an organization in living and following a budget unless you see the personal values that you do at home. When Kim and I established Rock Family Church 20 years ago, all we simply did is we took our personal financial values and applied them in the church setting. And so therefore, we never bought anything on time or on credit. We always paid cash other than purchasing our property and building that we had a mortgage for. And then we need to implement these practices into our personal life, and we'll see the overflow into the guidelines of the church. And so what it really is we need to learn the disciplines, the discipline of saying, no, I want that, I see that would be cool to have, but it's not in our budget and we are not purchasing it. And then the place to begin, if you've never had a budget or you've never really followed a budget, maybe you created at the beginning of the year, but you never lived by it. The first place to begin in building and establishing a budget is to take last year or take 2023, that you have a full year, and you say, where did we spend every dollar? This will shock and surprise you. The same way it does when people take Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University. He says, take 1 month and track where every dollar is spent. They're shocked at how much they spend going out to eat. They're surprised at what they spend on buying coffee. They're surprised on snacks, treats, things that just easily add up, that money is being spent and is sifting through their hands. And so then once you've established all of where every dollar has gone, you're going to drop them into these, I would call them budget buckets. Here are the 6 main areas. And for those of you that have a budget, here are some percentages that you can follow. But a well-balanced church budget typically breaks down into these 6 main categories. Each has a recommended percentage point to ensure that funds are used wisely and in alignment with the church's vision. And while these percentages you're going to hear, they're going to vary based on church size, on the context, on the priorities, or the general guidelines that you've established for a budget. When we first began Rock Family Church, it was a third, a third, a third. A third on facilities, a third on operations, and a third on staff. And that was kind of the big buckets that we tried to live by. And so initially, we were only spending 32% on staff. We ran very lean and mean. We still do to this day. And then facilities, a lot depends on where you're at. There are churches out there that are listening that you're like us, that just in the past couple of years, we became debt-free. We paid off our building. So that allows us some freedom that monies that was going towards mortgage, now we're turning those monies to match and meet our priorities. What we did is we increased our giving and our community outreach, and we're taking mortgage money and turning it to ministry impact into people's lives. So here are the 6 buckets. Let me share them with you and we'll wrap this up. Number 1 would be, and usually this is the largest bucket, would be for personnel and staff compensation. This should range anywhere between 35 to 55%. A lot just depends on your other buckets and what percent you need to function and operate there. And this category represents the largest portion of a budget, and it's integral to the staff's mission. We need those people in place. We need, some of you are the only staff person, and we need you in that position, that when you can function full-time and put your full-time efforts into the mission of the church is going to go much further than if you're having to work another 40-hour-a-week job and do ministry on top of that. And then larger churches may have a lower percentage due to the economics of economies of scale, so to speak, that while smaller churches may be closer to that 50% mark, it just really depends on where it's at. And here's what that bucket is going to cover. It'll be salaries, benefits, housing allowance, health insurance, retirement, contract labor, other personnel expenses for pastors, for church staff, and ministry leaders. That's what's going to go in there. We utilize ministrypay.com, and that's what helps us establish our salaries. And they have, lots of variables you can choose, the size of the church, the location of the church. Here are the 2 to help you out there. I choose the window of our annual income and the ministry position. I could be running 10,000 people, but if my income isn't at the typical range of a 10,000 church, I can't spend more on my staff positions just because we have a great attendance. We don't have the income. So I base it on our annual income, and that's what we look at for pastor, associate pastor, children's, youth, worship, and on down the line. The second bucket that is probably usually second in size often are our facilities. And this would be our building and grounds. This would be your rent, mortgage payments, utilities, electricity, water, gas, maintenance, repairs, property insurance, the weekly cleaning and upkeep of the property. And so this percentage will vary on whether the church owns its building, renting a facility, or operates in a more frugal space, or maybe you're in a temporary space and you only have the facility on for 1 day a week for your church services. And so newer or debt-free churches might allocate less to this category. The third area is missions and outreach. And this is going to be anywhere from, hopefully, from 10 to 15%. This is going to be local outreach, benevolence, helping people, financial assistance and aid locally. This will be national contribution if there's organizations that you contribute to, or global missions. We contribute to ARC. We're a partner church with Association of Related Churches. We're helping other churches plant. We're big time. We spend a large portion of our money in local community outreach. And then we have missionaries around the planet that we are supporting, and we are a major contributor and donor on a monthly basis to support and fund them. Many churches set a goal to increase this percentage as they grow, reflecting the Great Commission and the emphasis on outreach and serving others. The fourth area would be your programs and your ministry outlets. This is going to be basically your children's ministry, youth ministry, adult education, small groups, men's ministry, women's ministry, discipleship material, church events. This is going to include resources for ministries to directly support the spiritual growth and discipleship of the church congregation. And it's kind of it's It's example, I'm thinking specifically of like my worship and production department. Their budgeting, my team is all working on their budgets now, and they're working off of last year's budget, and they're reflecting on where they spent their money. Do they want to spend it the same? How are they wanting to use that? Are there any equipment needs that they have for their department that they want to improve their sound system in the children's ministry or whatever that might be? They're working and processing through that. Number 5 would be, the 5th bucket would be operations. And this would be what I would call administrative expenses. And this is going to be somewhere in the range of 5 to 10%. This is going to be the logistical, behind-the-scene costs necessary to keep the church running smoothly. This is going to be office supplies, computers, technology, software, internet, phone bill, printing, postage, licenses, software licenses, and other administrative costs. And then number 6 is an area that a lot of churches don't do. Maybe you're in a place that you can't afford to yet, but I think you need to find a place to start. And number 6 bucket is savings and reserve. The percentage point here is 5 to 10%. If you can only do 3%, start saving money monthly. Write it into your budget that you are going to save. Make it a line item that you are going to withdraw from your monthly income is going into savings. And it's wise for churches to maintain a healthy emergency fund. Most recommendations are that you should have in your emergency reserve fund 3 to 6 months of operating expenses. You can pay all your utilities, your staff, everything that would take to continue ministry as it is today for 3 to 6 months to ensure that stability in times of unexpected financial strain. Now, I think a lot of us probably went, what would that be? And in 2020, we realized we need to have an emergency reserve fund. Now, thank God, when everything shut down, I sent an email to all of my staff, and I said, you've heard me say for years, we have an emergency reserve fund. I want to assure you, in the midst of all the chaos and all the questions, you are going to be receiving your paycheck every 2 weeks, just like you have, and we are more than covered, and the board has approved us to tap into our emergency reserve fund to keep everything functioning. The tension, the gasp of, thank God, was a huge relief in that situation. Some of you that are along the border states of our nation, and you've experienced the tragedy of hurricanes and the storms, and people aren't coming to church. You can't have church. You don't have power, electricity, and there are those that still give checks and cash, and you're not getting those contributions. That's why we have an emergency reserve fund. And so I believe that churches with healthy finances aim to build reserves for stability and long-term planning. And so it's going to cover savings for the future, savings for building funds, or we're saving for equipment project. We wanted to add an LED wall to our stage design. We started setting some extra funds aside in our savings account, designated out of our general offerings to go towards that cause. Now, here's the bottom line. My wife, Kim, is our chief financial officer and has been since the church began. But here's a great phrase that you need to recognize. There is only one pie, and which department gets how much determines on how you cut the pie, how you slice the pie. If we say, well, you know what, we want to hire a new staff person, and we're wanting to hire that person, then we need to take some money out of administrative cost. We need to take some money. We need to reduce utilities, whatever that is. We got to find a place. We can't just say we're going to increase in this area, or we're going to buy this new building and our rent or our mortgage is going to go up by $1,500 a month. We have to take that out of somewhere. We have to take that out of salary. We have to take that out of our savings, whatever that is. I hope you won't take it out of your donation and contribution expense and giving to the community and to our missionaries. But then a practice that we do is when we're working on our 2025 budget right now, we do not base on expected growth in our income. We live, function, and die on the income of 2024. That's what we establish that we will build our budget upon for 2025. Now, we've been very blessed this year. We've seen a marked increase in our giving. I want to say it's either like 9 or 11% over last year. And it would be real easy to be real excited to say, well, let's just write in 11%. If that's where we were in 2024, we're 11% up. Let's just believe God for another 11%. We can continue to believe God, but we're going to function by facts on paper. We're going to function and be good stewards by what we see, and then everything that comes in, if we are ahead another 11%, guess what? That's that bonus money for those projects, needs, and issues that we didn't have in the budget that we can begin to knock out and take care of. And then we function on a cash basis. Yes, we'll purchase things on a credit card, but the only thing that we ever purchased over time was our building facility that we had a mortgage for. In other words, we utilize a corporate credit card in making purchases, but that purchase is not made on the credit card unless we know that when that credit card bill comes in, we are paying for it 100% cash for that monthly bill that comes in. So basically, nothing is spent on the card unless it's approved in the budget. And then we are having our department heads are right now submitting their 2025 budgets. That's their money to spend throughout the year. Let's take, for example, I'll say our children's ministry, let's just say they've got $2,000 a month. They have $24,000. They look back at last year and they say, where did we spend it? What are our needs this year? And they get to spend, I'm entrusting them as a leader and a manager over those funds. I'm not nitpicking on where or how they're spending that, or our youth pastor is spending this on camp and facilities or whatever he's doing. I allow them to have that flexibility. And that's their money to spend. The only thing that they have to get approval for is if they have a major purchase is coming out of that allotment. We would be stuck if 5 departments came in January and said, hey, new budget, I need $10,000. Well, I need $12,000. Well, I need $8,000. We would be cash poor for the moment. It's in the budget for the year, and so we have to navigate the release of those funds. So there you go. Your personnel, your facilities, your missions and outreach, your programs and ministries, your operations, and your savings and reserve. If we can assist you here at Rock Family Church in helping you or your team and their department, we'd love to do that. If you as a lead pastor, senior pastor, have any questions, need some feedback, need some coaching, some insight, some wisdom, I am offering to do this as a blessing to you. Just simply email me, Dean at Rock Family Church, and I'd love to assist you in any way, shape, or form that I can. Check out all of our free resources on deanhawk.com, and we've got some new sermon series that are always being released. Check that out. Share this podcast with a friend. God bless you guys. We'll see you in December.
Thank you for joining us today. For a free sermon series and teaching outlines by Pastor Dean, visit us at deanhawk.com. Be sure and join us next month as we continue our growth on leadership.